welcome
That was 12
to
seconds.
Oh my god, please don't come for me like this. Okay, so I don't know if you guys could feel the tension in the room, but this is going to be a very exciting episode. Welcome to another episode of Smoking Room. This one will be much more special than our usual ones. We have special guests. We got to invite other people from a different podcast, so I would not want to not do my due diligence to introduce them, so I would like them to introduce themselves, so please go first.
Hi, my name is Kylum. I don't use pronouns, name only. I am the scrappy surprise extra member of Golden Truth podcast, and I am extremely excited to be featured on When We Cry.
Oh, wow, it's really smoky in here. You guys weren't kidding. Do you have like an air purifier or something that we could set up? We kind of do things like out in the open field.
I guess get all the nature in, just touch grass constantly.
Yeah, touch grass. That's how we maintain our connection to reality. Hi, I am Jennifer Boer, not the host, but still the Witch of Communication, visiting here from the distant land of Golden Truths and Umineko a podcast about Umineko. Very excited to be here and talk about gender, the only thing ever on my mind.
Hi, I'm Kirby. You all know me from the rest of the content on this channel, so...
I'm Matt. I am still somehow here. They still haven't noticed me and kicked me out yet, so very excited to be coming over here from Golden
You're a
Truths
diversity
as well.
hire.
Yeah, the diversity hire of just being a cishet white dude. Sup, everyone?
You know, it's important for every perspective to be heard.
It's very important that you all hear my opinions about gender, just to make sure we get all sides of this.
Thanks, Matt.
And hello, this is your friendly neighborhood mushroom. I would be basically, wrangling this episode. Unfortunately speaking, I would also be holding a portrait of Des because of his sad Portuguese times. He cannot be on this time slot to be with the episode, but he will be with us in spirit. And he also wrote me a bunch of notes that he wanted to mention in the podcast, so I will mention them when time due. So.
Oh yeah, Des scheduled this episode for 8 p.m. EST, and then right before, on the day of recording, you went, wait, I scheduled it at 8 p.m. EST? I thought I did it at 8 a.m. AST, fuck!
This never happens, so it's just so funny that it happened the one time where we have
I love the idea that 7 people can be like, yeah, I can totally be here at 8 a.m. EST, even though I live on the East Coast, so that's 5 a.m., and, Des didn't ever realize that maybe that was weird.
Yeah, I was I think Des asked me, and Des was like, hey, do you think you could, record, 3 a.m. EST in your location? And I was like, well, if I'm always recording in a closet, so probably, and Des was like, okay, yes. It's just very funny, too.
Oh, dear.
Thank you, Des.
Yes, love you, Des.
Miss you.
My name is Yensid, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm, going to come out as cis.
I'm so sorry to hear
Man
that.
nouns for my dude gender.
What's better than this? You and me, Jensen.
I am an FTM trapped in a cis man's body.
Things happen.
Male to male transgender.
Shut up. Jensen, I'm gonna kill you before this episode ends.
Okay, great. So, yes. So, just like you have heard, we have a bunch of guests from the Golden Truth podcast. I think there's an S in the end, right? Because I think if you just look up Golden Truth, it's a completely different podcast or something.
Yeah, yeah. No affiliation with Golden Truth singular. We are Golden Truths multiple. The multiple truths that exist inside of Umineko.
Okay.
It's a theme. It really
That
makes
sounds great. So, today, since we have all these lovely guests, our topic for today is gender in Umineko, which there's a lot to talk about. We will have spoiler-free sections and also spoiler sections. The first half of the spoiler-free sections, we will be basically getting all the way up to the end of question arc. But before we jump into all those fun stuff, I want to know, how far are you on your Umineko journey? When did you read about Umineko, or what's your relationship with all the other, WTC works, I guess?
So the year is 2009, and my friends are like, hey, there's this visual novel that is coming out. It's the sequel to Higurashi, and we all started reading it together, and I got to the end of episode 4, reading the fan translations, and then I got to a specific character showing up in the beginning of episode 5, and I was like, this shit sucks, and I just dropped it for literally a decade.
Wait. Are you saying...
And at the beginning of this year...
Sorry. Are you saying that the Ben Shapiro of Umineko was a gigantic turnoff for you?
Yes. Radigan the Rat Detective. I had my first encounter with Radigan, and
we
I
all
was
love
like,
Rat Baby
I am sick of this shit, and I don't want to read this anymore. And I did not continue in Umineko until literally like 11 years later. At the beginning of this year, I picked up reading it because a bunch of my friends were. I'm guessing because Higurashi Go started airing. And got invited into a Discord server with some friends who were also reading it for a podcast, and I eventually ended up on the podcast itself. As of right now, I've read about halfway of episode 5, and I regret to form that my opinion on Radigan the Rat Detective is completely 180'd in this time period.
I'm glad to hear that.
But I've more or less...
Umineko's own Vriska.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've still been reading it until the podcast catches up, so it's fresh on my mind when we record our episode 5 episode. But that's me,
amazing.
My relationship to Umineko.
Yeah, this recording is coming in the fucking hyperbolic time chamber in between us finishing question arcs and me, the editor, getting all of the question arcs podcast episodes out and edited. So this is I think really ripe time to talk about kind of where we are with themes and stuff, and especially gender. I started reading Umineko. We were talking before we started recording about like what our first visual novels are. If you don't count things like Ace Attorney or Professor Layton, Umineko is my first visual novel. Oh, that's so sweet. I started reading it like as a teen, and kind of read it off and on through to kind of my freshman year of college, where I fell off in the beginning of or kind of in the middle of episode 6, which is a really bad time to fall off of Umineko, I will say, in a very spoiler-free kind of way. And then I came back to it during the pandemic because, like, fuck, what else was I going to do? And fell back in love with it. And then I corralled a bunch of my friends into reading it and recording a podcast about it with me. And now, here we are. In that time, I've read Higurashi. I've read Phase 1 of Kikonia. I am up to date on the travesty that is Higurashi Go and Sotsu. I'm as deep in it as you can be without doing something completely insane like reading Rose Gun Days.
Oh, well, Jen, you should be happy because there's actually surprising amount of Kikonia readers on this podcast, and also actually Rose Gun Day lovers who will stand by Rose Gun Days.
I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's very good.
I'm glad somebody likes Rose Gun Days.
It's just it's sitting in my downloads folder, staring at me, and I can't meet its gaze yet.
I need to get around to it too. Yeah. So my experience with Umineko, it was just kind of like just to keep it brief. It was just kind of like my pandemic project. Like, welp, all I'm doing is going to work and like sleeping. I might as well read this like 100-hour visual novel because I'm literally not doing anything else. And yeah, I really liked it. I've read up through like is the one with Peace considered episode 9? Is that like
I just pretended it doesn't exist, 9? But yes, let's say it.
Oh, damn.
We did a whole episode on that, on my opinion about it. And my opinion on that episode was actually way more softer than what I actually think now. But yes, let's say you read up.
Cool, very scary to hear as someone who is nowhere near that far.
No. I love Umineko. If like I am probably the biggest Umineko brain rot person on this server, besides like maybe like Sayo.
I don't know. I know Jen.
I'm going to have to dig up this podcast episode about God, what's episode 9? Last Note. I'm going to have to dig up your Last Note episode and see what all the hubbub is about, because that's something I've nowhere near talking about that with anyone.
Yes. We'll get there.
Oh, yeah,
Anyway.
yes.
Episode 9 seems to be just like the hangnail of the series.
It's fine. It's
Well, we don't have to talk about it. Didn't we just say that we're not going to talk about spoilers?
It's fine.
Oh yeah, spoilers.
Anyway.
Spoilers.
Wow, I love the spoiler-free section of
I
this
do not
podcast.
hear
Spoilers.
it.
Spoilers do not include
spoiler-free anyway.
opinions.
I do not hear it.
I pretend not to see it.
I am looking away.
I think Matt.
Oh, God, right. Yeah, so I was just minding my own business, enjoying my day, when suddenly out on the street I just hear the slow clanging bell as Jen approaches and goes...
In my knife sharpening truck.
And Jen just goes, "Hey, Matt, what if Homestuck was good, huh?"
What? What if Homestuck was good?
That is amazing slogan. That is wild.
I had a whole different cell for normal people, and then for people that are internet poisoned in the way I did, I said that. Yeah, what if Homestuck was good? And apparently it worked.
Yep, she got me.
Is that why everyone else has read Homestuck?
Yes, I have read Homestuck.
Yensid's name is a valid troll
I have
name.
not read Homestuck, but I am like almost curious about reading it in current day.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't
Don't
worry
do
about
it.
it, dog.
Don't do it.
Worth it.
You don't need to know.
Your name's a valid troll name.
Okay.
So is mine.
So Matt, you read it like last year, or currently reading it this year, I guess.
Oh, I'm currently reading it. I'm up through 4, waiting to go on 5, but I'm too steeped in anti-fantasy to want to go on to 5 and start reading ahead of the class because I don't want to give up on the mysteries and solving them. And Kev's like, yeah, if you want to, here's some good starting points. And I'm like, no solve, only find out.
Oh my god.
No
Matt, how can you ever know the answer unless you check?
I'll die and then figure it out after that.
You can't tell if you're right. Oh, when you get entrance to the Golden Lands?
You know, if you take the question arcs, turn to the last page.
That was definitely me too. I just like spent forever between 4 and 5 just thinking how the fuck am I supposed to solve this?
I will let the mask come off. I didn't do anything like that. I pushed go on episode 5 like immediately. Like, fuck, what's going to happen next?
That's fair. That's fair.
I will mention my cred for Umineko is that in 2011, as a baby child, I picked up Umineko because I seen the very horrible, non-existent Umineko anime, and then I was like, today I will sit in this chair and I'm gonna read all of Umineko. And then 2 weeks passed by, I read all of Umineko, like the end, just like sat out of chair.
2 weeks.
Yes, I
2
woke
weeks.
up every day and then sat in front of a computer for like over 12 hours and then went to sleep and then did that over and over again for 2 weeks. It was my like middle school summer, and I was like, I walked out of Umineko as a changed person. I was like, this work is the most important work of my lifetime. It's like I've been rereading it multiple times over the past 10 years, I guess.
Okay, so how I got into Umineko was, like, when the pandemic started, I, like, just graduated high school, and I was like, well, guess I'm not doing anything for however long this takes, so I just started reading a bunch of VNs, and I read House and Fata Morgana on my PS Vita, and I was like, this is the greatest story I have ever read, and I tried to find, like, fucking anything else that would fill a similar hole, and the only thing I'd find was Umineko. So then I started reading it, and then after episode 1, I heard everyone go, "No, Umineko spoils Higurashi," so I was like, okay, and then I read all of Higurashi, and then went back to reading Umineko, then, like, finished Umineko by the end of the summer.
Well, this is just how I know that, like, I always think when I talk to, like, I guess, like, English-speaking VN fans, and I was just like, man, like, VN in, like, America is just so behind the times, like, nothing is translated. Fate Stay Night doesn't even have an official translation. I just learned that recently.
Yeah, I just told, like, Mushroom that, like,
and
yesterday.
it blew my mind.
America's so far behind that Fate Stay Night's still a pornography here.
Yeah, she just went, "Are you fucking serious?"
Oh, yes, 100% sure. Thank you so much for saying that. So now we have established that now we're gonna march on to the fun gender section of this episode. So one of the first
fun is an interesting choice of words.
I love gender personally.
We're gonna be talking about pronouns.
Okay, so
we will have fun.
We will have fun
together here in the smoking room.
Yes, exactly. So, well, one of the first topics, I love how I organize this. This is fucking hilarious. Our first topic, misogyny that runs through the family, and how Kingso basically perpetuates the misogyny. Like, what's the general thoughts on that? Like,
and we're talking about Kinzo up to like episode.
Yeah, episode 4.
Episode 4.
So
no.
nothing. Nothing.
Everybody, remember, this is episode 4. No spoilers.
Yeah. So to do the exact opposite of a spoiler and talk about the first thing that happens in Umineko, like, you literally start out the series by having Kinzo, like, in his study, like, flying into these, all these moods, screaming about, like, owning Beatrice, about, like, oh, you'll come back to me, I'm sorry for what I did, I'll take you and I'll seal you away, I'll never forgive you, and, like, in this complete fucking work, fucking, thank you, God, someone else gets it, Beatrice. So that's, like, a really compelling introduction to the idea of, like, gender in Umineko, I think, where, like, someone who I follow on Tumblr, whose URL I won't mention for fear of blowing up his spot, but someone I follow on Tumblr described Ryukishi's writing as if he thinks men and women are not just, like, different kinds of people, but completely different species.
Tim Allen says that in his biography. Please continue.
Is this the woman is from Venus and men from Mars?
A little bit, I think so. I think that women in Umineko, there's so many different kinds of women to talk about, but it always comes back to this idea of, like, men and women as, like, people who just function differently, who have different stations in the world and have different stations, like, in relation to each other. And somehow this idea does not end up being, like, horribly, unbearably sexist. He's got a little, there's some, like, nuance to it, but I think that wherever you go, that the fundamental separation of manhood and womanhood is, like, really key to him, and that the ways that they interact, like, I don't know. I think gender in Umineko is complicated. Let's say.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna ask that question. I was like, are you saying that as, like, do you think Ryukishi realized that? Like, I think, like, one of the first things I noticed while I was listening to the first episode of your podcast, the Golden Truth podcast. I'm just going to plug it
Umineko
again.
podcast, a podcast about Umineko. Thank you.
Yes. So that is that the first time Des and I both listened to it, we were talking about how we felt that we disagreed with, like, what you guys were saying about the whole thing about gender, because when Yuki should write these things, how, like, aware do you think he is? Because when I feel like I'm reading the beginning part of Umineko and how he writes about these characters, I think there is active critique about, like, gender or toxic
absolutely.
Masculinity, like, that's happening, like, which I would also, like, immediately, like, I find it super fascinating, because, like, why does Ryukishi want to write horny battler to, like, harassing his, like, basically cousins in, like, the first scene. I was like, what is the importance of that?
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts about that. To stay on the misogyny in the family, I think one thing that Ryukishi absolutely understands is that misogyny, abuse, like, writ large, but specifically for our conversation here, misogyny, is not just, like, an idea that, like, oh, women are treated worse than men. He really understands misogyny as a system of abuse, as a thing that and doesn't just exist to, like, harm people, but exists to control them and shapes them all the way through their lives. You look at Ava in episode 3, and how the horrible ways she's treated, the horrible things, Kraus and Kinzo say to her. A woman's, station is beside a man. women are not fit to be the headship, etc., whatever. And how you see how Ava spends the rest of her life fighting back against that idea, but also fights back against that idea by trying to perpetuate the Ushiramiya family state, everything that is
the legacy.
The legacy, exactly. Yeah. Like, oh well, if I can just be in charge of this, then everything will be fine. And the misogyny that I experienced will be remunerated, and I will prove them wrong. Meanwhile, she is over here treating Rosa like absolute dog shit, treating Natsuhi like absolute dog shit because of for misogynistic reasons, treating Rosa poorly for misogynistic reasons. It is Ryukishi understands that misogyny and gendered violence doesn't just exist as a void or just inside of particular interpersonal reactions, but as a thing that exists within society and of society, and something that shapes people from birth through to death.
Yeah, I totally agree with the fact about how she treats Nazi. Okay, so now I'm gonna bring up Dessa's notes because he really wanted me to read this to be this in here. He says...
Yeah, message bottle for sure.
I know. He said this. Eva has this whole thing about being tied down by her gender in the eyes of her family. But the only reason that she wants the headship, the bigger reason that she wants a headship is basically to prove everybody wrong and to validate her effort and to, basically her superiority to Kraus, which keeps being denied and not acknowledged because, she's a woman. And that's basically what Kingzo and Kraus have said to her. Mm-hmm. And that we also see that dynamic that she basically used that on Natsuhi. That said, Eva's not really a feminist. She doesn't actually believe that female and male are the same, that she just, in this point, that she just believes that she is that one female who can challenge men. The way how she treats Natsuhi it's not very, mm-hmm. They're not, she's not uplifting her. She's basically, one of my favorite, scenes in, EP1 is she just, immediately claps. She claps Nazi so many times. She's
literally.
She's you're a baby maker, you're a glorified maid,
mm-hmm.
You're you don't get to say jack shit in this family.
Well, not just that she's a baby maker, but that she's not a baby maker, that she failed to be a baby maker for 6 years, is an incredibly...
Her sole role is to pop out a kid, and she fucking sucked at it. Is Ava's entire line.
it's a very I think that's something a point you have to give to Ryukishi. He really understands that what the functionings of misogyny, even between women inside of womanhood.
Her only problem with the standard is that it applies to her.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's that she meets the standard in her eyes. She understands that it is a double standard, that she is better than Kraus. And that, think about the way that she talks about her relationship with Hideyoshi. It's a very, Hideyoshi is not, the most active character in Umineko. But their relationship is constantly framed as one that is actually really healthy between the two of them. They counterbalance each other really well. Hideyoshi is, kind of this nurturing figure, this figure that...
The only head couple that matters.
And says, no, Ava, it's okay that you shaped your son to be the avatar of your rage and to carry out your agendas through the Ushiramiya family. It's okay, honey. Look, we're all just trying here.
The worst thing Ryukishi has ever done has made me...
We'll get to George. We'll get to George.
The worst thing Ryukishi has ever done has made me like or want to pay attention to heterosexual couples.
True. That's why we're here, to say, no, they're not.
Anyway, so Eva, absolute girl boss.
Gaslight, gatekeep.
Ticks all the boxes.
Yeah. Oh, God, Ryukishi is so invested in girl bosses. There are so many fucking girl bosses in his fucking... I don't know that there's a woman in Umineko off the top of my head that in some way is not a girl boss.
I would say the closest is maybe Shannon. In question marks, at least.
Yeah, totally.
Well, she gets her really cool moment in EP3? Is it EP3 or EP2? EP2, where she stands off against totally. Beatrice, and she's like, I have love, fuck you, Beatrice, you don't have love.
Thing is very...
Yeah, I can't think of any any girl in Umineko who isn't some kind of girl boss, but there are many male wives.
Umineko is really the realm of girl bosses and male wives, if you think about it.
Yeah, I was gonna bring back to my thoughts about like Balor's shitty sexual harassment behaviors, and I was thinking about like I feel like Ryukishi has a really good understanding of like what parents shape what child in the way that it's like you meet like Rudolph and you're like, oh, that's like a womanizing like fuckboy man, like, and then you like meet Balor and you're like, oh, all of those problems that his dad has definitely
this is a
all
womanizing fuckboy boy.
Yes, exactly. Like, and it's pretty funny because like, and then like all of like of course, like, we'll get to George, but, like, all of George's, like, inner dialogue, that it's very, like, very gamer.
Have you heard of the Warring States period? There was a great general there who said,
His name was Hideyoshi.
His name was Hideyoshi.
Like my cool dad, Colonel Sanders.
I think that there are a lot of reasons that episode 1 like shows right up with the weird interfamily sex talk. But I think one of them is you have to compare it to Onikakushi, the first episode of Higurashi, where you see Keiichi and Mion and Rena all engaging in the same kind of banter, like to. And it feels less weird there because they're like a bunch of dumbass teenagers, and that is the way a bunch of dumbass teenagers would talk to each other. It's a little weirder when it is inside of a family, all of this stuff is. I think
I was actually thinking about that, about like specifically about the family part, and because so of course like we're basically taking like Balor's shitty sexual harassment behavior in a vacuum, but like if let's go back to EP1, the like airport scene, and also subsequently after that, like when they get to the pier, is that like the same conversation is like. Not only Battler's talking about like, oh, you know, I grow tall, like I'm so cool now. Like Eva's like, oh, Battler, you're grow so tall. Look at you, so handsome. You probably get a lot of girls, unlike my son George. And then immediately start teasing about like getting girls to him, and like basically like that made like Battler super uncomfortable. And then swiftly after that, like he basically sees Kirie, and then Kirie is like joking about how he's gonna like basically like cock and ball torture like Rudolph later. And then like all of these like really basically comfortable conversations about like using sex as like a way to put people down basically, that I think is really interesting. Like it's such a like a like it's a power dynamic. Like later on like Battler runs into Jessica, and then he immediately's like, hey, let me grope your boobs. And I feel like in any other story we'll be like, no, don't touch my unsullied boobs. Like she's just like, yeah, like bring me your penis, let me grab those too.
Well, what I think this sets up to me is kind of two things. It's one, like you understand that like sex is status in this family, like not just like sex between two people, but like physical sex and like gender is status inside of the Ushiramiya family. Like the women are all commenting on, oh wow, look at how like virile and swag Battler is, and it's all and like, also and also it's the way that it's framed. It's that everybody's smiling and joking and just be like, haha, well, we're just having a good time. But also they aren't, because all this time, all of this subtext is happening when Ava says, yeah, like, unlike George, my son, when are you going to get some girls? Of course, obviously, George has a girl. George has a girl that he's literally going to propose to right now. And so there's the, Ava is like...
his 16-year-old servant.
Yeah, well, okay, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
But like that jab is like, it's a funny little joke, but also it's not. It has that layer underneath it of Ava actually being frustrated with George because he needs to get a wife, like through all these marriage meetings they've been setting up, so that she can succeed in her thing, and et cetera, blah blah blah. Like it's that kind of multi-layered relationship and dialogue dynamic is really important actually to Umineko as a whole, but especially to like, understanding gender in the Ushiromiya family.
Yeah.
I think.
I was also going to bring up, like, just about basically the idea of controlling our own sex and stuff. Like, Kiria shows up and she's like, well, I have my Leisha, my man. And then, like, Rosa shows up.
Mm-hmm.
I find it really funny that, like, a lot of people find Umineko hard to read. And it's long. Like, it's unbearably long to a lot of people. But, like, Umineko's, like, beginning part, like, is rich with subtext.
Absolutely.
Like, we haven't even left. We haven't even gone on the island yet.
Literally. Yeah. To take a very slight diversion, the manga and the anime both start on the island. You start with the battler jumping off of the boat and being, here we are in Rakenjima. But the fact that the visual novel has the journey to the island is so fucking important for both setting up all of these family dynamics and just for like the sensation of like, you're going to the island. You are leaving regular space and going to this space where reality is uncertain and you don't know what the truth is. And that's why the visual novels are the best format to read Umineko. My 10-part video essay series forthcoming.
Oh yeah, I guess now that you pointed out that like I didn't think about it until now, but I guess you could see the closed circle isn't just a thing for the mystery, but also for how society functions within this closed circle of a family.
Yeah.
That's interesting. How do you mean that?
Just how, like, internal a lot of the family dynamics and everything they care about and bicker about is.
As in, you mean, like, the psycho abuse is not only the systematic, like, misogyny that's happening in the outside world, it's, like, it's extra amplified because it's Ushiromiya.
There's so much happening inside of this family. Yeah, it really is, like, I see what you're saying.
Well, so now we have spent so much time off of the island, so now we're finally revived at the island, and I want to talk about Jessica as a character, because I find it really fascinating that, I guess it's kind of lost in translation, but it is mentioned that Jessica speaks in a very, like, masculine way, which is...
I love the way that they localize that, why they have her say, like, what's up, battler? It's been so freaking long. It's great. It's so good.
Yeah, some fucking PG swears. It rules.
Mm-hmm.
Jessica is the girl who says brah.
She is, yeah. She's very brah.
And I think, like, that's a very interesting way to basically introduce Jessica, who is supposedly the person, the female figure that's supposed to marry, like, the next head of the family. That's her only purpose, is to be pretty and be, like, a marriageable material, but she just shows up and, you know, she's just cracking jokes. And I guess, like, this is a very interesting mirror to, how Mion talks in Higurashi, which is who also just, like, talks like a dirty old man.
Yeah, totally.
And the whole concept of, like, Jessica that she introduced in, like, EP2, like, what's your guys' thoughts about that? Which is, like, the whole, that she talks about Jess, her, like, school personality, and, like, Jessica at home.
We kind of got into that in our episode 2 episode over at Golden Truth and Umineko podcast, a podcast about Umineko. But to put it really, really short, I think that, I mean, in terms of gender, I was thinking about this earlier. Jessica's kind of just Mion again. Like, her whole arc is kind of just Mion's arc, but again, they even both have a ponytail. Like, the tomboy girl who has like a secret girly side and doesn't know, like, how do I connect with this boy I like? And is he put off by, you know, my boyish, exterior? But the Jessie versus Jessica thing, I really see that in terms of talking to the mystery element of the series, of talking to, like, the concept of, I have this other identity that these people don't know about, but this other identity allows me to do things that I want to be, so I can be this, you know, this person that everybody knows, which I think in the context of a mystery novel, where you have theoretically a culprit hiding somewhere inside of the main cast somewhere, I think is... Yeah, you have a
Sus.
God. Yeah, someone
When
very
the witch,
sus.
when the
someone.
witch
among
is
us.
sus.
Sussy among us.
I'm so sorry.
All over
Des-
us. No, you're right.
Des
It
is
had
gonna
to
hear this
happen.
clip and he's gonna start like just punching his computer.
There was one episode of the log where we said Among Us too many times, so it just got censored.
yeah, Des.
It got beeped every single time somebody said Among Us.
Oh, that's really good.
Good podcast.
But I'm interested, like, did anyone else, so I didn't really see like a particular gendered angle on that, but did anyone else here like kind of get anything like that from it?
Why I put it in is a lot about expression, I guess. Not like Jessica tries to act very perfectly prim and proper when she's at home, but like she just like feels so much more at in her own body when she's at school, and I think like that comes off more important as a concept just in general in Umineko. And I guess that's me throwing it in there because I thought it was a very interesting way to introduce it from Jessica's point of view.
I'm not sure if I really see the thing with Jessica as being that gendered as much as it is just like bougie professionalism. Of just being prim and proper versus being unhinged in yourself. But I do think that there might be that Jessica has higher standards for professionalism than like a male successor would. Just chances to like fuck around and stuff, whereas the girl would have to be all prim and untainted.
I mean, to expand on that, if you really just look at Kraus versus Natsuki, that pretty much sums up exactly what you're talking about. Natsuki has to watch every single thing she says, while Kraus is walking around like Mr. Magoo stepping on rakes, and everyone's like, wow, what a champion.
Yeah, I'm Battler, I can just do anything.
Yeah, like, Kraus is literally like, I'm gonna turn Rockinjima into the next Disney World.
You go,
and
Queen!
People are like, yeah, this is a smart thing to say.
Guys, I might be stealing my dad's money to make Disney World. Don't worry about it.
It's definitely, just give it a couple of years. Give it a couple of years.
None of my investments have worked out, and I've been coasting entirely on the laurels of my father.
Oh,
but that means I'm a really good businessman, and everyone should love me.
Trust me, it's a great idea. We're gonna make Disney World in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with no nearby airport. You have to come to it with a boat, and the island is very small.
I may have invested all of our Dogecoin into Kickstarters.
Oh my god,
Kraus would fucking invest in Dogecoin.
It's great to read Umineko in modern time while I sit here thinking about sharpening my guillotines about how I'm gonna which way I'm gonna cut Jeffrey Bezos.
Kraus is totally in the black book.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
All we can say for certain is he did not eat a cheese.
Oh my god.
How dare you accuse the future head of the Ushiramiya family of eating a
Perfectly
cheese?
cheese-shaped Kraus right next to her. Yeah. Does anyone here know if... I don't remember how this would work out. I feel like they must say it in the novel. When Jessica gets married to this hypothetical guy that she's going to get married to, does that person, is she the head of the Ushiramiya family, or does the headship pass to that guy?
The dude is.
That guy.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point. Like, that's why she's supposed to be like the prim and proper marriageable material to go out, and that is just more fodder, like basically for Eva to make fun of Natsuhi, being like, wow, Natsuhi, look at you, like, can't deal with the servants, like, look at how much of a klutz that Shannon is, like, you can't manage your own daughter, like, what a fucking failure of a woman you are.
Yeah,
it's great, Natsuhi. It took you 6 years to pop out a kid, and she's not even a boy. What's your fucking problem?
I was gonna say how, but just Ava sort of just punching down to, I think, every...
Certainly every adult woman who she interacts with, yeah.
She tries to punch down on Kyrie, but Kyrie is too smart for it.
Yeah, with, the exception of Kyrie and...
Kumasawa.
I don't know.
Kumasawa?
Yeah, Kumasawa. I do not know how I forgot Kumasawa's name. I feel
Kumasawa's not a threat. She's, entered the realm of, she's old woman, which is, a entirely separate gender from, young woman. Like in this scheme. Like I'm not
Once
saying
you hit menopause, it's all over for you.
I'm so well, that's how society,
totally
that's how
get
it's
what you
framed,
mean.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I do like that
Yeah.
Kumasawa almost acts like a pervy old man more than a nice old woman.
And that's why she's great.
Kumasawa's
Just like,
I love Kumasawa.
She's basically Master Roshi living on that island.
Battler, eat my pussy.
God.
Wait. Actually, could I talk about one thing that I'm kind of mad about? So, in my perfect version of Umineko, I wouldn't change anything about it. But the only thing I would change is, the scene where Battler runs into Kumasawa at the very beginning?
Yes, thank you.
And then he's like, hey, could I, like, touch your, like, it's like, oh, I'm gonna touch boobs. And Kumasawa's like, yeah, boy, come touch my boobs if you really want to rub boobs. And then, in my perfect version of Umineko is that scene will have a payoff, and then Battler would accidentally touch Virgilia's boobs, and it would be a very awkward moment for everybody.
The triple
And
return.
that happened.
Hold on, you're not going far enough, because there's a mirror to that scene in episode 2, when a battler is inside of the dining room getting extremely drunk. Someone knocks on the door, he goes, haha, if that's the witch, tell me your boob size, I'll grab them. And then Genji just walks up and goes,
Genji, sir.
It's me.
So
So he needs to also grope Genji is where I'm going.
Yeah.
I have,
Or Ronove, I should
very
say.
good news for you about the Umineko Dojin scene.
It's vibing, and there's a lot of Ronove. I can tell you that.
Isn't there an ending in the fighting game where
Golden
Ronove
Kamehameha?
shows Battler's tits?
I would believe it.
I totally believe it. But yes. So, okay, do we want to talk about George? Let's talk about George. It's open season.
Is it George time?
It's George
time.
time.
Well, I hate
Open
George.
season on George.
The George
Let's crack
question.
open the
I
George
fucking hate
cans.
George.
Everyone's favorite child,
Alright,
man
shove
who's
my
also
guillotine.
a pedophile.
So,
I don't think there's...
In defense
so
of
why
George.
did-
There's no
Why-
defense
why
of
did
George.
Well, that's the thing. I think that George is the character that has the single biggest gap between, like, the way the story presents him and the thing I think the story wants you to believe about him, and every piece of audience interpretation and reaction I've ever seen about him.
Yeah, I've not found a single person who likes George. The only moment where I thought, dang, George is pretty cool was the fight scene from, I think it's episode...
ET4.
It's really epic that I stopped my foot
Yeah,
just
with
in her
Gop.
face.
Yeah. Gop.
That was the one moment where I was like, dang, George is pretty cool. And I remembered, oh, right,
I mean,
he's
I mean,
Yeah, he
all
sucks.
the things he say in that fight scene is also extremely
So epic.
cringeworthy.
Oh yeah, it's super. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I did like his.
Yeah,
I did like his fight.
I did like just in the fucking EP4 where it's just like, I have picked my answer. Kill everyone. I was just
This
like,
is
damn.
the first cool thing
Sigma
George
male.
has said.
The Sigma Groin said.
Oh, God.
So, if you think about how he and Jessica theoretically killed each other in Gaff's battle, he, like, does a crescent axe kick on her head, right?
Yes.
Which means that she has to be punching up toward him. So she definitely punches him so hard in the dick that he
Yeah,
dies,
this is
right?
his best death in the entire series.
Like, explodes out the top of his head? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's really funny because even in that scene where he's
Best death, George.
Yeah, in that scene where like his fight scene's pretty cool, but the problem is that Jessica's fight scene is cooler and it's happening at the same time. So even when he shines, like he fucking pales in comparison to any other character in the scene.
Oh yeah.
I do disagree with that, though. I brought it up in the episode when we recorded that I feel very much
you
that the
did.
story very much believes that George's fight is the cool fight, and Jessica's is a lot more futile, and I think it's presented that way.
George has also got Victima. What is it? Victima.
I don't know.
Proposio.
Yeah.
It's the one that sounds
Proximatore
like
or something.
Mario. The clack 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 clack.
Yeah, the
He's got that
castanets,
song
yeah.
going for him,
Fucking
and that's
new
about
Super
it.
Mario Bros. On the DS sound font.
Literally.
Bob.
The Koopas, yeah, are all... Gop and George look out to the camera in time with all the bas. Yeah, for sure.
So let's start from like, when did you realize that you dislike George?
I dislike George the moment I did the math on how old Shannon is compared to how old George was, which I think was about an hour into episode 1.
That's really, really the thing, is like there's so much about that relationship that is like really doing everything possible to sell it to you as something that is wonderful and good for both of them. And George is so resolute, and he'll fight his whole family, and he'll go out on his own and provide for his wife, and his wife is 16 years old. Like, it totally undermines everything about what I think they're trying to do.
I feel like George is like I feel like with George and Shannon, Ryukishi was kind of writing it with the idea that you'd view it under, like, fairy tale relationship standards.
Yeah, totally. A total fairy tale.
But if you just see it as a relationship, you just be like, these motherfuckers.
Yeah, it's just really... So that's why... on our podcast, I try really, really, really hard to talk about George as he is presented in the book, and like what I think the book is trying to work with him towards. Because
we'll talk about that more, eventually.
Something I will say is that even though it does frequently feel like that the text doesn't totally understand that a relationship between a 16-year-old and a 23-year-old is fucked up, I think that the way that their relationship is portrayed, like, completely shows why it's fucked up. Like, the power dynamic between the two of them is really, like, well handled and very realistic. Like, it's not condemning it solely because of the age gap. It's condemning it because of the way their relationship is framed by that age gap.
Exactly.
I always thought it was, like, weird.
Yeah, like, class is a huge issue.
Which
like,
one of you is the handmaiden? Which one is the feudal lord?
George being a fucking weirdo.
I think it is aware of all that stuff, but I think the way the book tries to position it is that it is a relationship that is so pure and good that it rises above the troubled circumstances it exists in, is what the book wants
just
you
a
to
number.
believe. And I don't think that it does.
You get insight into George's internal dialogue in episode 2, and it's shit like, I like Shannon because she'll do whatever I want, and like, okay, you know, I gotta make sure that when I propose to her, she's not saying yes under obligation as a servant, but if she did an obligation, that's okay. Like, shit like that, right?
My favorite George moment in episode 2 is, man, my bullies back in high school were totally right. This rules. I love bullying Shannon.
Yeah, like, that's what I totally, like, I actually totally stand by the fact that I think I don't really give a shit about what Ryukishi said in other interviews, because this man has
don't believe in Ryukishi interviews. Ryukishi, goes insane before every single interview he does.
Yes, I genuinely do believe that he's just fucking around when he's interviewing. Or he's just half asleep, like, he's just sleepwalking while answering this.
But yeah, so I was gonna say, like, I think, like, Ryukishi does understand how he's writing George, because, like, everything George says during the EP2 supposedly romantic date is, like, atrocious. Like, he's like, oh, like, you know, I used to want to throw rocks at like couples too whenever I see them, and now I feel like the happiest person ever. Or like how he was like saying, like, about how if like she was like, like, Shannon, put on this ring. Like, well, if you don't want to put it on, I will order you to put it on. Like, you think it's supposed to be cute, but it's not cute.
I think that
like,
was part of the reason why at the beginning of episode 2 in particular, just in hindsight it's better, but felt like it really fucking dragged for me, because I'm like, I don't want to see any more George romance. I am sick of George romance.
What about close zoom in on Big George?
Yeah, that part's so good. I mean, in terms of gender, in terms of George's, like, manhood, George is consistently portrayed to be the cousin who is the most adult, who is the most, like, capable and like able to
reasonable.
Reasonable is such a good way of putting it, because the ability to be reasonable, specifically in the face of Rosa beating her child,
oh my god,
is like, it's very manly
that, like,
and adult to understand that certain family things are just things you can't interact with, and there's just, you know, you just have to go and wait for it to pass, and then, you know, you just act like nothing happened. Like, this is the reasonable thing to do.
George is such a rational man. Like, he sees a crying little autistic girl getting beaten by her mom, and he goes, well, you see, Both sides are at fault, really.
He just, and I think that exists in a particular way because, like, there have been times, I can certainly say in my history with my family where, like, something fucked up has been going on and, like, I have no way, I don't know how to talk about it, I don't know how to step in, and even if I do step in, like, what actual power do I have to change, to actually change things? Like, it's complicated, it is complicated, but I think that in terms of masculinity and in terms of manhood, I think that Ryukishi is doing something very specific by having George, the reasonable, rational adult, the super adult of the cousins, be the person who diffuses that situation, quote unquote diffuses. He does not diffuse the situation.
Yeah,
he ignores it. But he acts the way that he does.
Oh, 100%. I was actually going to mention, I think one of the other reasons why George is, like, okay with the, child abuse scene is, like, 100% Eva was very probably harsh onto, like, totally. George. Like, from everything Eva says on screen, you could probably think she says worse things to him, like, behind the doors. Like, you know, like, it is mentioned in EP3, I believe. It's, like, George is, like, he was actually more timid and more, like more reserved as a person, and he says, like, oh, like, Shannon was the one who brought me out of my shell and made me more of a, I guess, dominant man, but, like, so he was even more, like, I don't know, like, that's why the category where I mentioned about George, I wrote he's an incels George, like, he was totally, like, well, like, women don't want to fuck me, like, I'm such a nice guy, like, it's, like, that, you could totally feel that energy while you're, like, reading the dialogue.
He's just fucking Elliot Rogers.
Yeah. You know, why did they himplify George in the PS3 art?
I can't stand his PS3 art.
I do find it weird how, like, his appearance is completely different, and, like, where his lines about I'm so unattractive, like, and, like, the PS3 sprites are just like, what
do
the fuck are you talking about?
George?
But if you're reading the original, you're just like, yeah.
He's a little dumpy in the original, but everyone's a little dumpy in the original.
I think he looked. That's why it's good. I think it was better when he was dumpy, making him handsome, making him really handsome.
But yeah, he's hot. Why is he hot?
He should not be hot.
I shouldn't want to fuck George.
I don't think anyone should want to fuck George, just for your safety.
Yeah, and especially in...
They let too much air out of him.
I mean, his relationship with Shannon is the most I am a man and I am going to provide for my wife, like the most trad thing in all of Umineko, I think.
Do you know what I feel the happiest about talking about Umineko in our Lord 2021 is how much fucking internet lingo we can finally apply retroactively to Umineko.
I mean, yeah, we have a whole segment. Yeah, we have a whole segment called George is an incel. It's great.
Yeah.
Shannon's burning desire to be a trad wife.
You see, Battler is the Chad, while George is the virgin.
Battler is the alpha male, while George is the sigma.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to actually say about, like, gender in the relationship is how much of the difference between what we see in George and Shannon and Jessica and Cannon, how much of that is the gender swap and how much is actually the relationship?
Yeah, I think it's
pretty different. I mean, I actually...
Well, for one thing, there's like, the age gap is so much smaller, or non-existent, maybe?
Are they the same age?
16 and 18.
No, I think they're only 2 years apart.
They're 16 and 18, yeah.
Was Jessica
which is like,
older than Battler?
Jessica is slightly younger, I think.
Yeah, they're around...
It's like within a month. Yeah.
They're around the same age, yeah.
There's like a really big difference though, like big age gap between the Ushiro siblings.
Yeah.
How
yeah,
much is it?
Because we learn.
Oh yeah, you're right.
I think like Kraus is the oldest. I think Eva's supposed to be like a year younger than Kraus, and then after that, I think like Rudolph and Eva has around like maybe 5 years of difference, and I think like Rudolph to Rosa is like around
Rosa
10 years
is
of
I think in her early 30s.
Yeah,
in 1986. Because she's like
because I remember
she's in middle school in 1968, right? So that's not a long time.
In the Kuadorian flashback scene. No,
like the thing about go ahead.
I don't believe we have really nearly as strong anchors on how old the older Shiromiya siblings are, but like, you know, there's definitely this strong vibe of like Rosa is significantly younger than them. Like, you know, the three of them have been married for like probably around 20 years each, right? Which means that they're probably in their early 40s and 50s. Yeah,
going by age. Yeah.
Would Kraus already have been like married to Natsuhi by the time of like the Kuwadorian flashback for the
I have to do math.
Maybe. I mean,
yeah,
that happens when
married.
in like
it's the late
60s or something.
Because if Natsuhi and Kraus have been married for like 20,
totally.
like 25 years or something like that, right? If they've been married and then Natsuhi took a really long time to
because they pregnant. Basically had 6 years.
So they would have been married in 1962. So they were already married during the Kuwadorian incident.
Crazy. Timeline's crazy.
I know. To what was brought up about Canon and Jessica, I think that this illustrates kind of what I was talking about at the very start of the episode, I think, is that when you look at Canon and Jessica's relationship, you see a relationship that appears like that is like very non-standard, because you have this like boyish girl and this like very like effeminate guy who are like, girl is like trying to get the guy to open up and go out with her and all of this stuff.
Definitely cisgender person, Canon.
Definitely deeply cisgender person, Canon Umineko. God. Yeah, like
absolutely.
So I mean, maybe this is just me projecting my little thing onto Canon, but like when we talk about gender in reference to Jessica's Jessie versus Jessica thing, I think that really applies more to Canon, who has this one life that we know about as like the servant of the Ushiromiya household, but we know nothing about like, you know, what does Canon like, what does Canon want to be. We know all this stuff about Shannon, even about like Genji. We know his history of all that, of like his relationship with Kinzo and things like that. But you know, Canon is kind of this black box, which is why in my head canon he's a transgender, and he like, it's about, I don't know. I lose the thread.
I definitely had the
so
same
quickly.
head canon, the same thoughts about canon going into episode 2 and just seeing all.
Like, yeah. So you have these like two like kind of non-standard like a man who is not a man and a woman who is not a woman in the way that they are supposed to be, but the way that their relationship kind of exists, Jessica really wants to be a woman in that way. She thinks about, why do boys not like me? Why do is it my hair? Is it my style of speech? Why aren't boys attracted to me? Why don't they see me as a woman? And canon, we only get this very briefly, but when in episode 1, when Battler comes onto the island and like is Canon struggling with his little his pot of his bag of fertilizer or whatever, and Battler just lifts it up on one shoulder and is like, yeah, don't worry, dude, I got you, bro, and throws it onto the wheelbarrow. You know, Canon has a little scene to himself where, you know, he's I think we can interpret the like way he looks at Battler as like feelings of jealousy, like gender jealousy, like I want to be a man like that in so many
yeah. And what I truly like about Jessica and Canon's relationship is actually really well explained in EP4, is that like the way how George in the scene where he basically fights Gap, he talks a lot about, he was like, well, you know, I was gonna fight all the family member anyway for like my marriage for her, like she's mine totally. Now, like she has, like she's and like in a way that it's parallels the way how like Kingzo talks about Beatrice, but like when Jessica talks about her love for like Canon in that moment, she says, I want him to know that he could be loved, like, and he could be loved by somebody, and that I want him to know that person would be me. Like, I love him that way.
Yeah, totally. Oh, the canon, the real canon behind the canon. Oh my god.
Yeah, and that scene is really sweet because, like, one of the thing I find really interesting is that, like, the whole time when George asks, like, you learn what, like, Shannon's real name is from, like, the first time they talk to each other. They're like, don't call me by my, like, servant name, call me by my real name. And then, but, like, this whole time...
names are so important.
Yeah, names are so important. Like, like how Jessica keeps asking Canon, like, what's your name? Like, could you tell me? Like, every EP, like, she has a moment where she asks him that, and he never says it to her. And, like, I feel like it has a lot to do with, like, accepting yourself and, like, being able... Just, it's very interesting. I truly love that conversation in there.
Yeah, totally. But I think when you look at the things they want and I mean, their relationship, they don't get to make together. That relationship is still like very it's traditional though, in a way, because the woman wants to be a woman and the man wants to be a man, and they want to be together in a way that affirms both of their gendered places. You know, like, that's the thing that I come to ultimately about Umineko and gender, is that it has a much more complex and interesting view on gender and sexuality and, like, the relationship between men and women than a lot of kind of other contemporary media, certainly in the same kind of genre space as it. It doesn't ever imagine, at least we've seen so far through episode 4.
Makes sense.
It never imagines, like, what is a different... It recognizes all the the issues inherent in the relationships between men and women and misogyny and the patriarchy, but it can't imagine anything past that. It doesn't have any idea or even any suggestion about what the other thing is. It's just... I feel like it kind of... From where we are right now, it feels like where it ends up is just a better heterosexuality, a world where, oh, well, men and women will just work together and be the separate things that they are, and, you know, and forged together ahead like that, and it...
Interesting. I find that incredible.
We have solved heterosexuality.
That's kind of the vibe I get from it, is just that it's I mean, it's very interesting and it's very compelling and there's a lot to talk about there, but ultimately it's not a series that has, I think, a lot to say about queer relationships specifically.
I have more thoughts on that, but I will not talk about it.
I feel like there is, like, a pretty...
Oh, yeah.
I have so much more thoughts on that.
For sure, and I understand. We can, yeah. I
feel like there is, like, a pretty big core difference in Canon, Jessica, and Shannon, George's relationships, where when I hear about George and Shannon's loves, I'm just like, what does George even know about her to love to begin with?
She has big... She has
and I
big
don't
booba.
think he even wants to, like, know, whereas... Jessica, I feel like Jessica really wants to know more about Canon and
George and
see
Shannon
more of his
have gone
sensitive side.
George and Shannon have gone on a bunch of dates by the time the family conference roll around, right? Like they've had that chance to learn each other and know each other, where Jessica and Canon, like, Canon has explicitly refused those advances and said, I'm furniture, and, you know, squish the golden brooch and all that. Brooch? I don't know how to say that word. Brooch.
Squish.
But yeah, I think that there is, like, George and Shannon is just... the book so wants you to believe in that relationship, and I just can't, sir. I just can't,
I'm sorry,
and I won't.
Ryuki.
My favorite part about George and Shannon is when you think about how Shannon's actually been working there since she was 6, and every single year you go back, it gets
so we
worse.
know that there's some amount of history between George and Shannon, and how far back that goes, it goes, oh, it's so bad, it's so bad, it's so incredibly bad.
Just the
Absolutely
thought of 13-year-old George seeing a 6-year-old and being like, damn, like, it's just like, oh my fucking god. I know
she's gonna have some honkers. I can feel it.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's.
But in contrast, you have Canon and Jessica, who she first meets when she's 16 and he is 14. and they both see each other, and at this point in the story they're basically like, I don't really know who I am or who I want to be, but it would be nice to figure that out with you. And I think that's a really nice sentiment and a good jumping off point, instead of I'm a grown-ass adult who's using this child to figure out who I am.
I really wish Ryukishi hadn't made the age gap between freaking...
Yeah, for real.
No, I think the age gap is... Yeah. I think it's important to be there. I personally...
You think so?
I will argue about this... No, I'll only argue about this in the spoiler section.
I mean, fair,
but, like...
yeah.
I have way more thoughts on this,
yeah,
but we
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
cannot get into it here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
We only have 2 more topics, and then we can move on to spoiler talk.
Kick out the newbies over here so you guys can talk about the real shit.
You precious children are going to go play in your play place, and the adults are going to...
I'm going to open up Minecraft, and I'm going to make Rakajima on it.
I'm going to go feed my 5-year-old.
You're gonna be put in the timeout zone in the corner in the question mark area.
You all go to the guest house where people have to talk in the main mansion.
Oh, is this the conference starts?
I want to ask a question just about one of the topics before we get into it. Like, this is one of the non-spoiler topics, but is there much to really talk about with, like, lesbian Angie in episode 4?
Yeah, Angie may have been real.
No, she's gay.
Yeah, she's gay. She's gay for her real girlfriend.
Her real girlfriend who lives in Canada.
I know. I'm just.
No.
I know. I was just thinking there was more to talk about there in the later episodes, but I mean, yeah.
I just don't understand how people like walk out of Umineko and was like, you know who Angie should be with? The super older person who's supposed to be her bodyguard, not like, oh, Angie's totally a fucking lesbian. How is that not obvious to you?
Guys,
like,
I think I'm gonna ship Angie with Battler.
Yeah, for real.
No!
Well, that's
This
okay.
is what heterosexuals actually believe in.
This is a real. This is for real. This is like actually something that I'm still kind of understanding, and I might not get everything right here, but I feel like it's important to talk about. Is that I understand that in Japanese media, especially kind of like Japanese nerd otaku kind of media, there is a very big importance placed on the ability of the reader to basically like form relationships and like the shipping, essentially that there aren't canon relationships between people. They can be heavily implied by the author, but it's very important to leave that space so that people can do whatever they want with the characters or whatever.
Yeah, that's like basically any harem media ever. But yes, I understand.
Yeah, so I like where I come out with the very correct understanding that Angie is a very big lesbian. It is built into the story to allow both Juza and the BroCon shit like that.
Yeah.
Even like Ryukishi gives some lip service to that and some bonus material, and it sucks ass. It's so bad.
But like I just wanted to put it out here because like I don't necessarily have to preach this to the choir. I guess we all have agreed. But like when I was reading EP4, it comes off to me like, yes, Angie like clearly doesn't like that's not what she wants. She wants like a life partner. Like clearly like she has like this very in-depth relationship with this stake, like this mystical stake, like who's her best friend.
I mean, even the most anti-fantasy reading that you could give, she is literally spending her teenage years imagining a bunch of women in like legless, barely clad crotches, fluttering all around her. Like, come on.
Somehow that went completely over my head the first time I read episode 4. I feel really dumb.
Yeah, I was like, when I was reading it, I was like, totally, she's so into them. Like, she's like, she wants to, like, she, like, imagines she has, like, this, like, really cool girlfriend who, like, demands her of things, but also, like, wants to spend time with her, reads books with her. Like, how is that not, like, the most, like, beautiful lesbian fantasy I've ever read? Like, that's so Evie. I don't know.
It's so domestic.
Okay. I think I think partially the problem, at least with my read through episode 4, is like, I want to get back to the island. I don't want to read about school.
And also,
I don't want to read about school.
Yeah, I didn't get like, I didn't like even consider like lesbian Angie until Mushroom like mentioned it in an episode like after I finished it, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
I think I thought about it a little more in like the answer arcs, but I definitely didn't really think about it.
I mean, the thing is that, like I said, that ambivalence, that like the way that Ryukishi does not commit to it is literally built into not just Umineko, but like the Japanese fandom scene writ large.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I feel like I could kind of see Angie as like being pretty ace.
Yeah, like there's like you could do all kinds of things. I feel like I like Juza because he's a fuckboy, and like I understand like the people who see that chemistry between them, I guess. But have you considered
Juza and Battler? Have you considered that?
Have you considered Angie and her very real girlfriend who exists?
Like I honestly do feel like I can kind of see like more asexual, aromantic Angie over lesbian Angie, just because I kind of get more like similar vibes from her as my like very close like asexual, aromantic friend.
Mm-hmm. That was kind of the vibe I got too, but I can also very much see lesbian Angie now that I'm thinking about it the correct way.
Yeah, I'm trying to
like I didn't see like the stake thing as like, oh, she wants a girlfriend, just like she's fucking lonely and just wants friends, anyone.
I'm trying to think about like Angie through the lens of gender and gendered relationships, and the thing that I'm like literally formulating this on the spot, but like she is presented as this very stoic character who is like is just here to help Battler win the game, and obviously like we learn a lot about her emotional life through the course of episode 4. But her big final thing that she does is she has this tearful, reunion / like sacrifice with Battler, which I think is like, again, for how much of a like quote unquote unwomanly figure Angie is. I hope like everyone please understand the way that I'm deploying that term is with heavy air quotes. But the unwomanly figure that Angie is through the books ultimately ends with her having this great big outburst of emotion and like clinging to her older brother in like a very like a thing that can be very easily understood through traditional gender roles and traditional gendered relationships, a younger sister to her big brother. And that just goes back to what I was talking about, is that Umineko ultimately I feel like is a story that's just about like cis het people. It's written by someone who, as far as we know, has been living as a cisgender heterosexual man for the past 40-50 years of his life, and I think ultimately that shows through the work, and I don't think that's a bad thing. That's just his circumstance, and that when we find queerness, when I'm looking for queerness inside of Umineko, oftentimes it feels like it's kind of in the margins, it's kind of hidden away, and I have to.
Interesting.
Which again, that's Umineko. That like Umineko is literally about doing that interpretive work.
I'll.
It's all
do we know that Ryukishi isn't a trans man?
Do we know that Ryukishi is not a trans woman? Let me fucking tell you. Here's my 11-part video essay.
So is this the egg mode section of the podcast?
8 hours.
You have seen that one image of Ryukishi where his clothes are just trans-colored?
Oh, have I?
Symbolism?
I don't know. Symbolism? Hey,
subtext?
Look, there are a lot of us who've read Kikonia here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Like,
yeah, look, that's all I'm saying.
So come on,
that's all I'm saying. Don't need to say anything more.
Look at how blatant this character design is.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
I guess the last topic on the spoiler-free section. I think there was 2 more things I was originally going to talk about, but I don't know if we want to talk about it. I'll cut this part out if we don't want to talk about it. I have Battler continuously crying is as a topic. Like, why is why is it important? And there's a whole chunk in EP3 where Battler tells George that he should cry. Like, as in, like, you should cry, and you should cry about the fact that, like, you lost your parents, and, like, or your parent, your singular parent, Hiroshi, and cry about your loss of your girlfriend. And, if we want to talk about that, we can. And the second one is Ronove, gay or European. This is a crack topic that we keep mentioning in the podcast, but either or.
Ronove,
okay.
Gay.
I will jump in on the Ronove gay situation to just first lay out that Genji is definitely gay.
Genji is absolutely
Therefore,
gay.
Ronove is gay. However, while Kinzo does have sex with Genji, he is not gay.
Yes, we've gone over Kinzo Super Straight so many times.
Yes, that's the best. That's the perfect headcanon. I couldn't have asked for a better answer. Thank you so much, Matt.
What do you
that
mean
was very
headcanon?
good. I mean my head.
Yeah, Ronove's sexuality is so, like, here it's kind of like, here's a queer character to, like, kind of titillate the main character a little bit, and the main character's like, yeah, what are you doing? And Ronove's just like, whatever. And it's just, he's that guy. Like, he's becomes a lot more, but he's also that guy.
I have more thoughts on that. We can talk about that in the
sure.
spoiler section.
Renove is just Beatrice's best gay friend.
Yeah. Bi, gay solidarity right there. God.
Yeah. What else? So do we not want to talk about Battler crying? I can take that part out.
We can talk about Battler crying. I'm down.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes for my little drum that I'm banging. I think this goes to the other side of what I've been saying, is that while it does ultimately, while Umineko is ultimately a queer work kind of in interpretation, in understanding, which is a big part of Umineko. It's also, like, it understands that, like, you know, that manhood and womanhood are bad, and it has a very interesting and nuanced ways of getting that across by, like, having, you know, Ava and Jessica talk about the ways that expectations for womanhood constrain them, and also have, Battler talk about, like, hey, look, it's okay for dudes to just fucking cry it out. Like it, totally. I think it's really important for understanding that other side to what I've been saying, is that gender is handled in a way that is more complex than a lot of similar things in a similar media space. And it's very good, and that's one of the reasons I like it so much.
I don't think I can really think of any time in Umineko where crying is, like, portrayed as something humiliating. Totally. It's just, like, a very natural thing.
I mean, if you had to see your fucking family getting brutalized, of course you want to cry.
Yeah, totally. It's not...
Like, it's more of a display of passion than weakness or anything.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Like,
that's a good point.
Like, Kingzo cries all the fucking time. Like,
there is one character, actually, who is shamed for crying, and that's Maria.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's very... That's kind of more in Umineko's sort of, like, neurodivergence, adult-child relationship space than necessarily a gendered space, come back to our joint episode about talking about neurodivergent people and neurotypical people on Umineko, and then another episode we're gonna do about child abuse and just abuse in general, which is really just hitting
all the highlights, all the best and memorable parts of
I
Umineko.
know.
Yeah, for real.
It's fine. Yes.
Child abuse, yes or no?
Oh my god.
We gotta
vote now
weigh out
on
both
your
sides
phone.
in this debate.
We have brought in every cougar we could find on Rokenjima to talk to us.
Please,
As
please,
George
please.
would say, it goes both ways. Maybe Maria was just being objective.
Maybe she's just being cringe,
Yeah,
and that's
maybe,
why
yeah,
Rosa
maybe
has
like
her.
you just have to discipline your child until they fall into
Yeah,
line.
have you ever appreciated that maybe her vibe is bad?
Yeah, she did not pass the vibe check.
Oh my
Maria,
God.
we're gonna need you to roll for vibe.
Yes. Okay, so okay, I will take a breather, but so this will probably conclude the spoiler-free section of our podcast for this episode. Thank you so much for being on. I'll have to. I guess we had a pretty great conversation. Do you feel a lot of insight in your brain now?
Can I ask like our two wonderful departing members, my co-people over on Golden Truths, like, do you have any kind of like final takeaways or like where do you, after this discussion, like where do you sit with Umineko and gender?
I think canon is trans and Kirei is non-binary.
Thank you. Yes. My presidential
I think it
slogan.
definitely plays within the gendered boxes, but it plays a good game inside those boxes. It doesn't fall typically back into the more rigid structures that cause problems for everyone. Also, I fuck the Genji. But I'm not a homosexual.
Amazing. Okay.
And with that,
Hello, it's Mushroom here. But yeah, so what our original plan for this podcast episode was that we were going to invite the very lovely people from the Golden Truths podcast to talk about gender, and it was probably just going to be like a 2-hour to 3-hour recording block. But what ended up happening is that we got so into talking about these topics and so into the weeds that we end up taking up a 4-hour recording block where we did 2 hours for the spoiler free section, or maybe an hour and a half for the spoiler free section, and then 2 hours for the spoiler section. So yeah, I'm super sorry for all the people who were basically waiting for the whole episode for us to, I don't know, rip our mask off and start talking about spoilers. But you have to look forward to Gender Part 2 because it is really fun. So yeah, thank you so much. See Katsu Crime.